Clayton, you mentioned exit interviews. Every player stepped up and spoke to the media today. A lot of emphasis put on walking the walk, maybe talking the talk a little bit less. Sane, kind of what was your biggest takeaway from what happened at exit interviews this year?
There was a lot of great coverage of the exit interviews today by local media. I was tuned in on Twitter. I didn't make it out. Didn't feel like getting lied to, honestly. No, all jokes aside. It was a lot of good interviews, a lot of good quotes came out. I was simply focused on what guys like Zach Kleiman had to say today. I know the players are going to say what they have to say. I want to hear what he was saying. He's the man who's responsible for putting things back together, taking his team to the next level. There were two things he said that really stood out to me. Those two things were he was talking about how we've identified who our three leaders are. That's Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane. I agree with him. And he said that basically said it wasn't a secret. This is something that we've spoken to those guys as individuals, and we've vocalized in front of the entire team. I think that's very important going forward, that you set that pecking order so where it won't be any mystery as to who your guys are, who you're focusing things around. I also was impressed to see some of the humility that he showed. He asked the question, maybe we focus too much on youth and development and their draft process and those type of things. And I think that's something that definitely hindered this team. We talked about that a few weeks ago when I was on, how you lose a guy like Kyle Anderson, you lose a guy like DeAnthony Melton, which I'm fine with, which I think most of the fans are fine with. You had a plan. Basically, you were going to say that guys like Zaire Williams could slide in and do some of that. John Conchar might can do some of that. And maybe one of your rookies that you drafted can slide in and make things happen. Plus, you had Santi. But it didn't work out. And you didn't react to it. You know what I mean? You didn't do anything to bolster your roster and get yourselves ready for the playoffs. And I think that he saw now that he has to be more aggressive as far as building this team, not just taking this team from being a bad team to a good team, but making this team go from good to great. It's going to take a lot of work this offseason.
That plan maybe works out if you don't have the injuries to Steve-O and to Brandon Clark the way they did. Maybe it's them in the rotation there, Santi Aldama and Roddy, maybe giving you those contributions in Game 6 of the playoffs. But with those rookies, you could tell there's a little bit of a, deer in the headlights going on there towards the end.
But as Sane always says, progress isn't always linear.
Yeah, that's it.
No, I was glad to see that, obviously Zach Kleiman and Taylor Jenkins both, acknowledge the maturity issue with this team and say, hey, it's got to get better. On Zach Kleiman's end, he said, this isn't going to fly next year without saying it exactly. And then Taylor Jenkins, as he mentioned, saying we have to walk the walk next time around. That was important to hear from a leadership standpoint from this team. I went in thinking the worst thing that they could have done was just shrug their shoulders, chalk it up to injury, say, hey, if we had Steve-O, if we had Brandon Clark, if we had
running back.
Right. They said, hey, there's issues here that have to be addressed. They obviously didn't go into too many specifics when it comes to personnel, but from a maturity standpoint, that needed to be acknowledged from leadership. It was, and as Sane had said, empowering that trio, saying, hey, look, they didn't say whether or not, X, Y, or Z of what they have done or haven't done. They said, moving forward, these are our guys. This is our way forward. Not only are they our big three on the court, they're going to be the big three when it comes to leadership as well.
And it sounds like everybody else is kind of expendable at that point. In a certain sense, because if you're trying to keep those three, you're thinking about, okay, how can we build from that point on? I would say maybe Tyus and maybe Steve-O are maybe kind of untouchable in that regard. And then moving forward, everybody else, if you don't fit the mold, you got to go.
Well, yeah, we'll see, especially, I think there's going to be a lot of spotlight, especially with Dylan Brooks here. We saw him today. He was pretty frank, at exit interviews as well.
I'm going to let my agent handle that.
But, moving forward, is he a piece of this team? It feels like he kind of played and talked his way off of this roster moving forward. Is that the case? They don't have a ton of room when it comes to money. Obviously, they're going to have to move some stuff around if they are going to upgrade at that position.
We'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting summer. Very interesting summer. Fellas, thank you guys for joining me. Still got a lot more Grizzlies to get into.